Vivek, thank you for joining the first meeting of the channel. Maybe before we start, I do a short disclaimer. This has been a challenge offered by the DeFi Talents program that I'm part of, offered by Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. So I'm very happy to have you here. Vivek Prasannan, co-founder of Polkadex, a decentralized exchange based on order books. So Vivek, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you started Polkadex?
Thank you, Bianca, for inviting me for the program. Well, I think if you are looking at the way, how we started, it's quite a long way back because I came into the industry, like I was an engineer myself, and I was into IT consulting for a long time before I came across Bitcoin in 2013. And that's when I really started looking at the space and what are the challenges it faced. And the problem with decentralized exchanges is something which fascinated a lot of people who are in the blockchain Bitcoin industry for a long time. And I was one of those early people who tried to make some transactions with Bitcoin, and it was very evident that the problem of counterparty risk was a problem to be handled. And there were so many solutions out there in the beginning. And I think we have reached a point where the technology is advanced. And what we are trying to do is basically, Polkadex is a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange. And we are basically trying to extend the capabilities of DEX to give the same kind of experience that a user needs, that the user actually experiences in a centralized exchange. So we are non-custodial, but we are also able to accommodate transactions in a similar level as centralized exchanges. So you have a decentralized exchange order book with the same functions and similarities as you see in a centralized exchange with no custody of funds. So that's what Polkadex is. And I'm the executive director. And we have 3 co-founders. All of us are from India. And I'm Vivek, and the co-founder Gautam is the CEO, and we also have Dipanj as the CEO. Yeah, and right now we are a 20-member team.
Wow, that is quite unique. I know, as you said, most of DEXs out there are based on automated market maker, but you have quite a unique value proposition out here. What do you think would be like the greatest advantages out of this unique value proposition for the users?
Yeah, one of the things that we can notice is that the AMM pools came up because the order books were not able to scale the way it is needed. If you look at the way the trades are structured and how the market making happens in any exchange, you can see that it's inherently from a architecture perspective, blockchains are network, and you have a cost to interact with the network. But in centralized basic client server model, you can basically have those costs to nothing almost. But when you're interacting with a peer-to-peer decentralized network, there's a cost involved. So it is difficult to market make in the same frequency as you would expect in a centralized exchange because of the gas fees, and there are so many issues out there. And when you take out that technological challenge and try to implement it, it also compromises the user experience. So that's where we were researching on something that would allow people to interact in the same way as a centralized exchange, like in a high frequency trading environment. But that's the time when, like Uniswap and all of those AMM pools came up, because that was a way that people could actually trade in a decentralized way on chain, accepting the fact that you cannot trade like how you would trade in a centralized exchange. And it became popular because it's censorship resistant, permissionless, open, peer-to-peer. But we think that there's still a lot more to be done on the tech space by coming up with a kind of a hybrid model where you try to eliminate some of the friction points that you see in DEXs, and adding some capabilities so that people can still be remain peer-to-peer at the same time, you know, start using a DEX, which is not essentially slow, or as that wouldn't allow them to make a profitable trade in using the trading bots and all those things that they're usually familiar with in a centralized exchange.
I see. Maybe now we go a bit to the latest news. I know a couple of days ago you launched Polka IDO, which is basically the Polkadex Initial DEX Offering on testnet. What does it mean for the users? What they can do out there?
Yeah, Polka IDO is something we came up with after we launched our Polkadex roadmap, because there were a lot of issues that we faced in our own IDO process. And we could see that a lot of people lost money by trying to participate. And there was a lot of, you know, people paid for the gas fees, but they simply couldn't get the tokens. And there was a lot of issues in the community at that time. And that really opened up the case where the kind of infrastructure that we're building, the protocol that we're building, would enable us to actually create an IDO platform without too much of a hassle from a protocol perspective, right? So that's why we thought of taking it up as a challenge and bringing up a platform that would allow people to raise funds in a decentralized way. Because we feel that the current IDO platforms are, you know, generally centralized, if you must ask me, because once it reaches a point of popularity, you have an entry fee, kind of like a club, where if you don't have a minimum amount of money, you simply don't have access to those funds. So it becomes like an exclusive club. So I think if we are able to have on-chain consensus for these things, that's how the concept of DAO and, you know, decentralized decision making comes into play, where you're giving the control to the people to decide the kind of entry fee and the risk profile each project and the participant needs to have to enable that to happen. So Polka IDO is going to be run as a DAO, and the decisions will be taken by its own. It's a protocol, basically. Anybody can take it up and run it, but essentially it needs to have new projects onboarded. So we are also trying to kickstart it by allowing some partnerships to happen there, you know, by opening it up to people who are already in the IDO space and try and get it running and get the liquidity flowing, so that it is ultimately going to, you know, benefit the especially the new projects which are going to fundraise in crypto, because it's a cross-chain. I would say, yeah, it's like a multi-chain kind of fundraising platform where you can raise funds in not only Ethereum, you can raise funds in Bitcoin, because Polkadex chain essentially is going to be, you know, going to be a bridge. I wouldn't say bridge, like it's a cross-chain DEX, which means it will have liquidity, native liquidity flowing in from Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it has access to other ecosystems, which means that anybody can raise funds in multiple cryptocurrencies. So that's another advantage it has.
Since you mentioned multiple cryptocurrencies, so what type of tokens will Polkadex support? So on one hand, we have the substrate tokens, since it's been based on Polkadot blockchain, but then you also have the Snowfork bridge to Ethereum. So what should we expect out of this?
Okay, so the issue with the tokens is something which we faced even from the beginning, how to bring in tokens from the other ecosystems to the DEX, because when you design a DEX, liquidity is of paramount importance, because without liquidity, DEXs cannot function, because that's been the problem with many of the DEXs in the past, where they would start off and there's a lot of hype and people start using it. But essentially, when there's no incentive for people to come in and park their funds, liquidity dries up in a matter of time. And so we were always focused on interoperable solutions, and we were trying to see which are the other projects that we can actually leverage in order to design a DEX like this. And Snowfork was one of them. along the way, we were also opening up our own research and development on how to enable interoperability. And of course, we had ideas on connecting to Parachain, connecting as a Parachain to Polkadot, which would allow those tokens from that ecosystem to come in, because Polkadot is going to be multi-chain, and so it has access to liquidity from Ethereum. But on top of that, we developed our own protocol using state-of-the-art cryptography. We are working with some of the best minds out there, and we developed our own protocol which would allow native integration with layer 1 chains, which is going to be the first time it's going to be applied on a DEX, which means that we will be able to bring in tokens from other ecosystems. We are starting off with Ethereum, and for that matter, we may not be using Snowfork in the beginning, because it needs much more iterations before the final version is out. But since we were focused on building our interoperability solution, I think that would come out first. So the first solution would be a native integration with Ethereum.
I see.
So tokens in Ethereum, ERC20 can actually trade on Polkadex.
Great. So
Yeah.
you touched briefly about the Parachain auction. I know there is an upcoming Parachain auction. Can you talk a bit why it's so important for Polkadex to secure a spot for this Parachain?
Yeah. Ultimately, we've been building on Substrate. So we have a very deep connection with the team at Parity and, with the Web3 ecosystem as a whole. So we are, so if you look at the architecture, I think one of the ways we can actually offload some of the, what do you say, block weight, or maybe the runtime activity, is by outsourcing your consensus to another chain, which is what the relay chain like Polkadot is doing, right? So we always wanted to get that connect, because you get two advantages. One is, you can actually, we do not have to have that much of a market cap to actually secure the data in our chain. Secondly, you have access to liquidity coming in from Polkadot. So we always wanted to be a parachain. It was just a matter of when to do it. Yeah, so that's why we were like fully focused on building out our infrastructure first, focus on the protocol level first, and then once it's ready, go for the parachain. And we weren't like, so paranoid about it in the beginning, because we were not very crazy about going the first thing to acquire the first slot. We didn't want to do that, because we were too focused and obsessed with other challenges, which are much more deeper to us, like the high frequency trading and, all of those interoperability. Those were our biggest challenges. So now that we've decided, we're going for it, and we are going to participate in the batch 2 of the Parachain auctions coming up and ending early March. So I think everything is in place right now. It's going to be announced in the next couple of days. Yeah.
Right. So maybe you tell us a bit how people out there who believe in the vision of Polkadex can help you in the Parachain and put their DOT tokens, their Polkadot tokens in the Crowdloan to support you secure a spot for the Parachain.
Yeah, so I think right from the beginning, our tokenomics was designed for Parachain participation. Like we have about 10% of the total supply, kept aside in treasury for the Parachain auctions, and that is coming close to 2 million PDEX. And if you go by the present valuation, it's like $10 a token. It's close to 20. But then we have a different mechanics here. Like we are keeping aside 1.5 million as the base reward. But I don't want to go deeper into this, because it will be announced officially in the next couple of days. So I would reserve that those specific tokenomics details for that announcement to happen. But then you have fairly very attractive reward functions out there for people to really participate and get this DEX up and going, because it's going to be really helpful for the community because there's no other order book DEX on Substrate right now. So this is going to be the first one, and there's so many other AMM DEXs, but then This is the first one that's going to have order book, and also the other. We also have a Polka pool, which is similar to other AMM DEXs, but then we have eliminated the front running and gas fee problem completely. So I think this is going to be really beneficial for the community, because Substrate is going to be one of the major contributors of DeFi apps in the future, which will complement along with the Ethereum Solidity apps. I know you're an Ethereum girl, but I'm just saying, for in general, if you look at it, I think both ecosystem has its own potential to grow and work each other together. And so it's essential to have a kind of an island or a bridge which actually connects all of these ecosystems together. So it's very important that we have a Polkadex gets a Parachain.
I agree, and also I agree that it's a project to keep your eyes on. Tell me, are there any other means for people out there who believe in your vision to support the project? I don't know, spreading the word or jumping on your Discord, something like that.
Well, I'm right now involved mostly on the business side of things right now, because from an executive director position, I'm basically kind of the go-to person in case there's a gap in the functions, right? So I don't get a lot of time to chat with in Discord or anything, but I'm always available on Telegram, and from from an education perspective, like I also involved in evangelizing what we are after, right? What we see, how the industry will shape up. I mean, every time I have calls with other fellow projects, I always brainstorm the ideas with them, especially how Web3 is going to be in the future and how it is going to change the way people store and exchange their value, right? Right from the way they identify themselves to the process. So I think it's a combination of your basic rights to freedom and rights to your privacy, right? So that's what is being combined here, with a lot of projects coming up and doing their bit to make that happen. So even Polkadex is built out of that philosophy, where I actually wanted to give the final version of Polkadex is not this. Definitely, it's not this, because you do not have neutrality in solutions like this. But then the apps needs to go and happen at some point. They have to start at some point so that adoption can happen. And then, because if you look at the centralized exchanges, they played a great role in adoption, right? People who want to get into the space, they had a very, very specific role to play. So we cannot discount the fact that success need to be there, but then how it will evolve will also happen based on how much you stretch the technology to make these fundamental ideas behind freedom and all of these privacy things to happen. So that's why even in the designing Polkadex, we have made some compromises. I'm not saying it's 100%, that we cannot achieve 100% neutrality with the current set of technology that we have, but we are pushing to the limit, to the point where you at least make it peer-to-peer and take the custody away from the exchanges, so that that part is cleared. And once we have technology improved, probably with some, maybe at some point, quantum mechanics, I don't know how to communicate a sub-second on a network, but once that happens, I'm pretty sure that it just could be completely neutral, like Bitcoin. Yep.
That's an amazing value proposition out there. Maybe a final question for you. What's one person you admire in the blockchain space, and also one project that you think has great potential in the future?
Yeah, the person I've been admiring right from the beginning, or someone who actually gave me the philosophy of Bitcoin and taught me even how to understand the concept of valuing something, asset or something, is Andreas, obviously, because Andreas is somebody who was the lone figure back then when we started off in 2013. He was kind of the lone figure. I've seen so many of his speeches where people just didn't care. They considered him like a geek or somebody who stood out completely from the rest of the financial industry. But he's one guy who really got me believing and understanding what this is about. And obviously the project that is really, because I'm an early adopter. I mean, I've been into Ethereum space also from the beginning. I'm So if you ask me, Vitalik and Dr. Gavin are the two people who are really pushing it. I cannot really side with anyone, but those are two guys who are trying to push it to a point where, okay, this needs to happen, right? This is there, the technology is there now. You have the pieces ready, but now it's up to, so they are basically giving you the building blocks for people like us to think what to build with it, right? So they're giving us the tools to do it. And now we have to imagine the world that we want to create and use this tool to create that world. That's what we are trying to do. It could be going in any direction, but right now it's an open space. So Vitalik and Dr. Gavin are two people I really look forward to in terms of helping the ecosystem to have the tools to the developers and the entrepreneurs to create the world that can actually use this technology. Yeah, it's very nascent stage right now. It's we don't have a real, some people complain, okay, they don't have a real use case, but I think it's the first time we have an opportunity to commoditize trust as trust can be a commodity. Yeah. And if you look at the, if you look, it is really fascinating how it can be applied in many areas.
I do agree, and as you said, I think they had actually great contribution. I mean, they got us the white paper, the yellow paper for Ethereum. So these are great contributions. Vivek, thank you so much for this. It has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Bianca, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure talking to you.
See you next time.